Nick Marone had spent weeks planning every detail of the proposal. It would be grand, but intimate. A yacht off the coast of Italy, the sun setting behind them, the warm breeze casting soft ripples across the water. Brooke Logan would be surrounded by elegance, bathed in golden light, and overwhelmed by one simple question: will you marry me? He was confident, determined. After everything they had endured, complicated histories, broken loyalties, lingering ghosts. This was his moment to claim their future. What Nick didn't know was that Ridge Forrester, fueled by desperation and pride, had already boarded a nearby boat. He had caught wind of the proposal through Eric and had raced to intercept it. Ridge had no plan, only instinct. Stop the engagement before it became permanent. He told himself it wasn't jealousy. He said it was love. But inside, he knew he couldn't stand to lose Brooke again. Not to Nick. Not now. As the yacht drifted quietly beyond the cliffs, Brooke stood at the edge, soaking in the view. She felt something rare, peace. The kind of peace that only comes after endless chaos. She watched Nick walk toward her, something small and velvet hidden behind his back. She knew what was coming, and for the first time in years, she wasn't sure what her answer would be. But then it all collapsed. Without warning, a violent wave surged from the sea, slamming the side of the yacht with terrifying force. The boat groaned, lurched violently, and capsized in a matter of seconds. Furniture, glasses, and bodies were hurled in all directions. Screams tore through the air. Metal cracked. Water swallowed everything. Nick never even made it to one knee. Ridge, having just leapt from the trailing boat, was caught in the surge, thrown headfirst into the chaos. He tried to grab the edge of the overturned vessel, but the momentum yanked him under. Somewhere in the chaos, Eric Forrester had been clinging to a lifebuoy, trying to hold on, calling out for Ridge and Brooke, but then came the metallic snap. A loose iron beam, torn free by the force of the collapse, slammed down with brutal precision. It struck Eric's shoulder and head, cracking bone, and, before anyone could reach him, he slipped beneath the surface. Still, blood blooming in the water like ink. Underwater, Brooke kicked hard, lungs screaming for air. Disoriented, battered, but still fighting. She reached for the light above her, inching toward the surface. But then Nick. He was tangled in wreckage near the bow of the sunken deck, his leg caught in twisted railing. He reached out, grabbing her ankle, eyes wide in panic. It wasn't an attack. It was a plea. Help me. Don't leave me. Brooke hesitated. She grabbed his arm, tried to free him. But his grip slowed her ascent. Her lungs burned. She kicked harder. He wouldn't let go. And then everything went black. By the time she awoke, she was on shore, wrapped in an emergency blanket. Her chest heaved. Her ears rang. Salt and sand clung to her skin. Paramedics circled her, but her eyes locked on one thing: Ridge. His lifeless body lay several feet away on the beach. CPR had been attempted. Oxygen tanks lay discarded. His face was pale. Eyes shut. No response. Is he breathing? She gasped, barely able to form the words. A medic looked up grimly. He saved your life. Pulled you from the water and collapsed right after. He's unconscious. We're moving him to ICU. Fast. Brooke couldn't speak. Her fingers trembled as they reached for Ridge, but the gurney moved faster. Sirens began to wail. Nick, still alive but severely bruised and in shock, was being treated nearby. He was crying silently, ashamedly. I didn't mean to. I couldn't get out, he muttered. Brooke didn't respond. Her mind was fixed on Ridge, on what he had done, on the moment he risked everything for her. The hospital was cold and sterile. Machines beeped. Lights blinked. Ridge was unresponsive, locked in a coma. Doctors explained the oxygen deprivation had caused serious trauma. His vitals were stable, but his brain activity was minimal. The next 48 hours are critical, Lee said, her voice low, exhausted. He may wake up. Or he may never come back. Brooke never left his side. She sat in the hospital room, hand in hand with the man who had saved her life again. Her eyes scanned every detail of his face. The scratches, the bruises, the quiet strength. Tears came slow and steady. She whispered apologies, confessions, memories. You saved me, Ridge. You always save me. And her voice cracked. I never got to say yes. I never got to choose you back. Meanwhile, news of the accident tore through Los Angeles. The media swarmed. Yacht disaster off Italian coast. Eric Forrester presumed dead, Ridge Forrester in coma, Brooke Logan survives. At Forrester Creations, chaos erupted. Donna was inconsolable. Steffi flew in immediately. Thomas tried to hold the company together, but panic simmered under every conversation. And Eric, his body had not yet been recovered. Coast Guard divers scoured the wreckage. The ocean kept its secrets, but every hour without a recovery deepened the dread. Hope and RJ tried to support Brooke, but she wasn't hearing anyone. She only saw Ridge. Nick checked himself out of the hospital without telling anyone. The guilt consumed him. The ring, still in his soaked pocket, was a cruel reminder of what had been lost. He wandered the coast, replaying the moment again and again. If he had never planned the proposal, if he had waited one more day, would Ridge still be awake? Would Eric still be alive? Back at the hospital, Lee updated Brooke on Ridge's scans. There was a faint flicker in the neural activity. A potential sign of awareness. Brooke didn't dare hope. But she talked to him anyway. She told him stories. Read old letters. Played music from their past. She slept on the couch beside him and refused to leave. She kissed his hand every morning. Every night. Then, on the fifth day, his fingers twitched. Brooke sat up, heart racing. Ridge, she whispered. His lips parted, breath ragged. One word came through. Logan. It was weak. It was broken. But it was real. She screamed for help. Nurses rushed in. Machines lit up. Ridge opened his eyes, just barely, but enough. He was alive. Tears poured down Brooke's face as she gripped his hand. You came back to me, she said. Ridge blinked, trying to form words. You saved me, she continued. And I promise, this time I won't run. I won't doubt. I won't let anything take us apart. But before Ridge could respond, Lee interrupted. We need to run more tests. He's not out of danger yet. Brooke stepped back. But the fire was back in her chest. Hope. Love. A second chance. And though Ridge was alive, the wreckage of that day had only just begun to reveal its damage. Eric was still gone. The family was fractured. Nick, now drowning in shame, had disappeared. And the ocean had one more secret to give up. Because a week after the accident, the Coast Guard found a survivor. Washed up on a rocky inlet. Clutching a briefcase with Forrester initials. Eric Forrester. Breathing. But barely. Steffi Forrester stood frozen outside the ICU room, her hands pressed against the glass, breath fogging the window as the heart monitor flatlined. Doctors rushed in, shouting commands, but her legs gave out before she could hear the final words. A nurse caught her just as she collapsed to the cold hospital floor. Inside the room, Ridge Forrester, her father, her protector, her constant, was gone. Despite signs of improvement, despite the prayers and the hope Brooke clung to, Ridge suffered a sudden embolism during the night. A complication from prolonged oxygen deprivation. No warning. No goodbyes. The man who had pulled Brooke from the depths of the sea with his last ounce of strength died alone in a sterile room surrounded by machines and silence. It was over. When the doctors made the announcement, Steffi screamed. Not cried. Screamed. The kind of sound that ripped through bone. Thomas arrived minutes later, pale and shaking, barely able to process it. He was just waking up, he whispered. He was going to be okay. But hope was dead and so was Ridge. The Forrester family had lost its foundation. And Steffi, now forced to face the impossible, was shattered beyond repair. Brooke didn't speak for hours. She sat in the hallway, her hands still clenched, knuckles white. She had been holding Ridge's hand when it happened. She had been whispering to him, talking about a future they'd never see. "We'll go to Big Bear," she had said. "We'll take RJ, maybe Hope. We'll start again." She hadn't noticed the change in his breathing. She didn't know his heart was slowing. When the alarm blared, she thought it was a machine malfunction. But it wasn't. Ridge had saved her from drowning, only to drown slowly in silence, while she sat there telling him stories. Now he was gone, and the guilt was suffocating. Brooke broke down in front of RJ later that night. "It should have been me," she sobbed. "If I hadn't been on that boat, if he hadn't jumped in, he'd still be alive." RJ held her, trying to keep her from collapsing, but nothing he said could cut through her pain. "You didn't make him do it, Mom," he said. "He made a choice. He chose you." But Brooke couldn't breathe through the guilt. Her heart, once saved by Ridge's hands, now felt like it was burning under the weight of his death. But grief doesn't come alone. It brought Taylor. And Taylor came with rage. She stormed into the hospital, eyes wild, lips trembling not with grief, but fury. "You killed him," she hissed the moment she saw Brooke. "Don't pretend you didn't." Brooke blinked, stunned. "Taylor, no, but Taylor wasn't there for comfort. She was there for vengeance. You dragged him onto that boat," Taylor spat. "You let him chase you into another disaster. You always do. He saves you, and you let him die." Brooke tried to defend herself, but Taylor cut her off. He was healing. He had a life. And you couldn't let him go. You never can. You just take until there's nothing left. The hospital staff tried to separate them, but Taylor's words landed deep. Brooke's guilt ignited. "I never meant," she whispered. But Taylor's face twisted with disgust. "Don't act innocent. If you think I'm going to sit back while you spin this into some tragic love story, think again." Thomas pulled his mother away before things turned violent, but the damage had been done. And Taylor wasn't finished. The next day, she gave a statement to the press. She painted a picture of negligence, of ego, of manipulation. "Ridge Forrester is dead because he was pulled into a reckless situation that never should have happened," she said on camera. "There are questions that need to be answered by the woman who stood beside him when he drowned." The media latched on. Headlines exploded. Did Brooke Logan cause Ridge Forrester's death? Pundits speculated. Blogs dissected her past. Every mistake, every scandal was resurrected and dragged into the light. Brooke became a villain overnight. Friends pulled away. Business partners grew cold. Even Hope asked quietly, "Mom, what really happened on that yacht?" And Taylor made it clear she wouldn't stop. She filed a formal complaint, calling for a civil inquiry. She hired private investigators to comb through footage, logs, weather reports. She spoke with the Coast Guard. She was convinced, if not by logic, then by rage, that Brooke's recklessness killed Ridge. And she was going to prove it. Brooke, overwhelmed and isolated, retreated into silence. She refused interviews. She stopped going to the Forrester office. She barely left her home. Only Donna and Katie came by regularly, and even they didn't know what to say. Every room echoed with Ridge's absence. Every night she saw his face, heard his voice as he pulled her from the water. And she kept asking herself, what if Taylor's right? What if loving Ridge after everything had cost him his life? At the same time, Steffi, now torn between grief and fury, found herself caught in the middle. She didn't blame Brooke outright, but Taylor's conviction infected her thoughts. If he hadn't gone out there, she whispered one night to Finn's empty photo frame, would he still be here? Thomas, too, found himself cracking under the weight of it all. He didn't want to believe Brooke caused their father's death. But every time he saw her face on a tabloid cover, every time he heard Taylor crying alone at night, doubt crept in. And through it all, Eric Forrester, finally recovered from the sea, stabilized in a hospital bed, woke to the news of Ridge's death. He didn't speak for hours. When he finally did, his first question was, did Brooke survive? And when they told him yes, and that Ridge had died saving her, he simply closed his eyes. They were always bound together, he said. But not like this. Now, with Ridge buried beside Stephanie, the Forrester legacy has been cracked. Taylor is building a legal case. Brooke is drowning in guilt and isolation. The family is divided. The fashion empire is shaken. And in the background, the storm is still gathering. Because Taylor doesn't want justice. She wants retribution. And she swears Brooke will never know peace again.